The 2010s decade was extremely oppressive for black men. Very oppressive for black men. And the crazy thing about it is that all the racism, prejudice, the struggle that black men had with dating in the 2010s decade, none of that is going to go down in the history books. The 2010s decade, it was hard for me, and it was hard for a lot of black men because, and it's the 2010s decade was horrible for black men because that's when the manosphere was created. In the 2010s decade, that's when you saw a whole lot of black men go on YouTube and make channels, YouTube videos about how they experience racism and how we live in a very extremely anti-black male society. You saw that this past decade in the 2010s. And man, there's probably no other decade in history where black men struggled with women more than this past 2010s decade. Like the division between black men and black women was probably at its height of all American history in this past 2010s decade. You've probably never seen in American history before. We live in a society that was built off of racism towards black men specifically. We black men, we were enslaved, Jim Crow. Everybody knows the struggle black men have been in America throughout American history. Um, um, yeah, everybody knows it. But even though we struggled throughout the whole American, we've always had like dysfunction throughout the whole American history, right? The black community, black men specifically. But we never seen the division in the black community, the separation between black men and black women, like how we just seen this past decade in the 2010s. You never seen it before, and I could tell you from firsthand experience, man, this past 2010s decade, black men and black women were damn near completely separate. We never seen that. Even in the 60s, black men and black women were marrying each other, having families. Even when the black family structure got put in half, even when the black family structure got taken apart, in the 70s, in the 80s, we still saw, black people, black men and black women dating each other. You'll go outside, you'll see, back in those days, you go outside, you see regularly a black man holding hands with a black woman and things of that nature. But in this past 2010s decade, you really didn't see that. In the 2010s decade, you go outside, you see majority of black men alone. You saw you saw white men with women. You'll see Latino men with women. But you'll go outside, you wouldn't see no black man holding hands with no female. Because, man, Our women left us. They left us in the 2010s decade, and I don't give a fuck what anyone says. Them bitches left us. It's not my bad for my bad for the language, but I'm just keeping it real. And man, I remember in the 2010s decade, man, that's when I started talking to women. And let me be more specific. It was like a culture, you know. It someone people might say there's always been an anti-black male culture in the United States, and that's true to an extent. But man, it you wouldn't expect that in today's age, right? In this modern era, post civil rights era, that we could still have a society that hates black men, oppresses black men, and is out to get black men like how it was in the 2010s decade. It was like, it didn't make sense to me. I always used to think is like, why is society suddenly just getting like this now? This anti-black male society wasn't this extreme back in the 80s, the 90s, even the 2000s. What's so special about the 2010s where out of nowhere, starting around the year 2012, everyone just started hating black men, especially women? And I never understood it. It's like, what's so special about now? Like, what's causing this black male hatred to this extent post civil rights? And why what's so special about the 2010s? Why is there, like, what's causing this hatred for this extreme hatred for black men just out of the blue like this? It wasn't like this in the 80s and 90s or even the 2000s. And it used to perplex me. I'm like, what is this? What's so special? Like, and as I developed, you know, the answer began to be in my mind. This is spiritual. This is spiritual. It's a spiritual war against the black man, specifically the American black man. And there's always been a spiritual war against us since we've been in this country. But it got like elevated to a whole nother level in the 2010s decade. The spiritual war against the American black man. And some people might disagree with me because they think racism, we don't live in real racism in today's age, or because we have black men, we have a right to go to this store, go to that store, go to that public place, go to this public place. And there's some truth to that, but the racism in today's modern age, black men, we still face an extreme amount of racism and opposition, but now it's more subtle, but it's still extreme, but it's not blatant like how it used to be. Now it's subtle and demonic, and you have to have like a certain amount of intelligence to detect it, the racism and the opposition against black men. And I always used to think of like, man, society wasn't like this. Like, what? Why? What's causing people to have so much of a hatred and exclusion for the black man in this 2010s decade? Like, what's so special about now? You know, like the 80s and the 90s were closer to the Jim Crow era. How come it wasn't as anti-black male in society back then that it is now? I was like, I used to scratch my head, and now since I everything makes sense to me now. Everything makes sense to me now. Um, this is a spiritual war against God's chosen men. The Hebrew Israelites, you know, the biblical Israelites. That's who black people are, and there's a spiritual war against us. And the reason why the 2010s the 2010s decade had an elevated spiritual war against us Hebrew men is because we're living in the end times. I'm talking about we're living literally in the end times. Like, I'm not talking about it's going to happen in 20 years or 30 years. I'm not talking about it's going to a quote unquote biblical revelation end times is going to happen in a generation or two. No, we're living. We're right here. We're right here. I'm talking about where all the crazy stuff that the Bible speaks about that's going to happen in the end times. The age of tribulation, we're already in the age of tribulation. In my estimation, the age of tribulation started in the year 2020. So we're literally right here at the end times. Literally. You know, all the crazy stuff that's supposed to happen in biblical prophecy during the end times, during the age of tribulation, all that stuff is going to take place before the year 2030. By the year 2030, I believe wholeheartedly, by the year 2030, the kingdom of heaven is already going to be on earth. I believe that wholeheartedly because you can tell by what's all around us. You know, if you pay attention to what's happening to the world and you read the Bible, you know we're living in those times. Just turn on the news. Turn on the news. Like, man, I'm not even going to go into detail what's happening. Okay, let me go into detail a little bit. You know, the Bible says a whole lot of stuff is going to happen in the age of tribulation. You know, weather patterns changing, right? Plagues. You know, in the whole world history, you never seen the whole world history, Earth's history that we know of, where all volcanoes in the world, all volcanoes on the Earth, they're all erupting all at the same time, right? I never seen that. Literally, all volcanoes in the world are basically erupting around the same time. I never seen that before. You know, the weather pattern is changing. You know, the seasons are shifting, right? Certain seasons are lasting longer, certain seasons are shorter. You can go throughout the whole month of October. You can go out through the whole month of October without even seeing one leaf change color or even see one leaf hit the ground. So we're definitely living in interesting times. We're seeing rumors of war, like how the Bible says during the end times is going to happen. We're seeing it. I'm not even going to speak about the country. You know what's happening in the world, and you know If you're intelligent, you know what it's going to lead up to. And yeah, the reason why there was so much hatred for the black man in society, in the atmosphere during the 2010s decade is because there was a heightened level of evil against us because that evil spirit that's against us, the Hebrews, they know, that evil spirit knows that our kingdom is to come soon. So the 2010s was basically that evil spirit against the God chosen people's last really last time to, let me say, quote unquote, turn up against God's chosen people. And the 2010s decade also symbolized Esau's dominance. The 2010s was the last decade of Esau's dominance. In the 2010s decade, man, women were crazy over white men. And I used to hear this argument all the time on YouTube where people would say women prefer white men because white men have more power, they run the world. And, those talking points have truth to them. But white men always had power and ran the world. But women were not just going crazy over white men like this. It's like, what's happening? Like, what is this? So because white men run the world and have power, that means no woman is to want to fuck with a black guy. Is like, okay, back in the 90s, white men had power, right? White men ran the economy, ran the world, had the strongest armies, right? But even then, in the 90s, black men, a lot of black men were getting chosen over white men. Because, back in the 90s, that was real black culture, real hip hop, real black culture when people wanted to be black. The white man had power back then. How come all women weren't looking over black men back then like how they were in the 2010s? So I always knew it was more than just the white men having power. Why? All these women were flocking to them over the black man. I remember, man, the 2010s decade was hard for me individually as a black man to date women. I wasn't getting no play. I wasn't getting play like that. And yeah, I was always a good looking dude, bro. Tall, good looking. And I still couldn't get no play like that. And I never could understand why. It's like, hey, that's weird. That's weird. That's weird. You tall, you good looking, and you still struggle with women. That's weird. And I'm not saying there weren't any areas I can improve in. You can always improve. But I mean, how perfect do I have to be just to get an average female? It's like, it wasn't like I'm going after only the baddest of females and females who are extremely highly attractive. No, I'm talking to regular females most of the time. You know, a lot of time, a lot of the females who I'll try to talk to, approach, a lot of them, they weren't the baddest, the most attractive women. And yeah, so I witnessed firsthand like the struggles of black men in dating in the 2010s decade. You know, and you go all on YouTube on the manosphere for the whole decade. You hear black men complaining how black women don't want black men, black women don't fuck with black men, black women don't date black men, black women think they're too good for black men. We heard those talking points throughout the whole 2010s decade. You know, regarding how black women shit on black men, and it has truth to it. I witnessed it firsthand. It's very hard for a black man, especially in the 2010s decade, to get a female. It's like no woman will fuck with you as a black man in the 2010s decade. It's like you could be the best looking dude ever. They still not. A lot of them still weren't. These women still weren't fucking with you. But you look around, they fucking with all these other races of men. Like it didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense, and it used to fuck with me. I'm not gonna lie, it used to fuck with me, man. How can I be this tall, good-looking dude, man? And I can't even pull a female. It didn't make no sense to me. Like, I used to be thinking, is there something wrong with me? Is there something I can improve in? Am I not as attractive as I think I am? And you know, if you struggle with women, you begin to doubt yourself. But I always come back to the conclusion is there's nothing that I'm doing wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. You know, there's always something that you can improve on, but there's nothing I need to improve on this much. You know, I should still be able to get moderate success with women. You know, my game is not that whack. You know, you feel me? It's like, what is this? Then I began to find out who I am as a black man. You know, since I was young, since I was a young little kid, I always used to hear black people were God's chosen people, were the Hebrew Israelites of the Bible. And I'll hear it in one ear, it'll just go out the other ear, you know. And I remember hearing that again when I was like 12. Black people, we were the Jews of the Bible. And I didn't know whether I really believed it or not. Then I heard it again when I was 18. I heard it again when I was 18. That, oh, black people were God's chosen people. And I'm thinking, like, I don't know, maybe. But I got older. I started to experience society as a black man, firsthand experiences as a black man in America. I experienced the discrimination with women. I experienced racism at the workplace, you know. And man, I'm thinking, man, America is tough for a black man. Why does this whole society hate on us? Why is there so much of an opposition against us? And then I'm thinking, like, man, we definitely something is special about us black people for the whole history of the United States. The whole country just hating on us, you know, treating us like shit. What's so special about us? Maybe you are God's chosen people. Then I hear about the curses of Deuteronomy. I hear about the curses of Deuteronomy. And all those curses of Deuteronomy regarding God's chosen people, those are all the curses that black people experience today, exactly 100%. So after I hear about those curses of Deuteronomy, I'm like, oh shit, we're definitely God's chosen people. That's why everybody hates on us. We are the Hebrews of the Bible. And, you know, I'm a bloodline Israelite, so I finally began to know who I am as a black man. I'm a Hebrew, right? So, man, like for the longest time, I did not know why I was experiencing all this bullshit with the women and in society. Like, literally, I'm a handsome dude, tall, handsome dude. I should not be struggling with women like this. It's like, I'm not saying I'm not on no arrogant tip where I think I should pull every female type of thing. But I always knew this something was up. What is up with this? I can't pull not one female. If I was a light skinned dude with the same height, same swagger, same looks, if I was a white dude with the same swagger, same looks, same height, I'll be fucking every female on this fucking planet. So I'm like, oh, it finally connected in my head. The reason why I'm getting so much opposition as a black man in society, these are the curses that we are under as God's chosen people. You know, and the 2010s decade, symbolized the end of those curses. The curses were ramped up. The evil spirit against the black man, the Hebrew man, was ramped up to a whole nother level in the 2010s decade because that was Satan's last battle against us, right? And it's not only Satan, right? It's the Most High, Ahia, too, because the Most High, he's the one who let the curses be on us. And the 2010 decade symbolized the end of those curses against us. I'm talking about, man. No, a lot of times, no woman would talk to me. I couldn't get a text back or anything like that. Even when women were, when women were, I'll talk to women, right? A lot of times they'll come off. The body language would say that they're interested in me, but they still won't end up fucking with me. It was like, what is this? And this would happen repeatedly. I'm like, okay, something was up with this. Okay, this is some spiritual warfare. That's the conclusion I'm coming to. It's crazy. The 2010s opposition against the Hebrew man, it lasted throughout the first few years of this decade, the 2020s. But now, and this year, 2022, I don't sense the same racism opposition I did as the 2010s decade. We're transitioning into a new age. Now I look around, I'm starting to see some dark-skinned black men finally getting played with women. I'm like, you didn't see this shit in the 2010s decade. Now I'm seeing dark-skinned dudes have girlfriends holding their girlfriends' hands in public and shit. I'm like, hey. And literally, I used to feel the racism in my city used to be so bad that you could literally feel that shit in the atmosphere. Now, I don't feel that same racist energy in the atmosphere. So, man, the curses are being lifted off the elect of Israel. Yeah, the curses are being lifted off of us. And this is going to be one interesting decade. Yeah, we're in the age of tribulation. We're in the age of tribulation. Tribulation only lasts 7 years, by the way. You know, tribulation only lasts 7 years. That's crazy, right? Tribulation lasted in, it started in 2020, with this COVID crazy stuff, right? So that means it's going to end, the age of tribulation is going to end in 2027, 2028, you know. And in the age of tribulation, most craziest things are supposed to happen on this world. So we're in a calm. We're literally in a calm before the storm. Like we're living regular life right now. I mean, we're still a couple years in the pandemic, but a lot of people, we're still living normal life. Basically, we're going to work. We're still able to drive our cars, go to the grocery store to buy our food. Go home, relax, take a shower, watch TV, use the computer. We're still living a normal life now, but this is the end of the normal. You know, so enjoy this last normal. Enjoy this normal life that we're living right now because, man, this is the end of it. You probably only got 1 or 2 more years of this normal life before shit hits the fan and the whole world just is gonna go bonkers. Where are you guys? Peace.